Live everywhere.
DailyKos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, September 10th, 2019. Figured I'd turn the microphone on after all and do the show regardless. Lots to catch up on. I am still reeling from how much we didn't get to yesterday. And there's an awful lot. And as I was mentioning in the morning post, I feel just awful that I didn't get to the latest news even before the latest news was no longer the latest news. By the time we got around to the show, or done with the show yesterday, or actually I think it was still, perhaps hadn't happened when we were done with the show yesterday, but they are starting, or they're supposed to be starting, the trial for the Chinese spy picked up some time ago at Mar-a-Lago. Remember, the one who wandered into the area, into the building, saying she wanted to go use the pool, and she had a purse full of hard drives and thumb drives and malware and God knows what else. And picked up saying she wanted to go to the pool, changed her story once she got inside. It was a whole mess. And I guess they were getting ready to start that trial, and during jury selection, something happened. And we'll talk about exactly what that was shortly, I am sure. But first, let me just tell you that, in case you were wondering, what is this noise coming through my headphones right now? DailyKos Radio is live now. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. At least that's what Bill says, from all the way up in Portland, Maine. Says, I will fill your brain with fuel faster and cheaper than the ground crew at Prestwick Airport, buddy. And that's a fact, and that's probably true. And not only that, I can probably get it for you for wholesale, no problem. That developing into a major story as well. Trump, by the way, denying that he had anything to do with it, I think was the last I saw of that story on Twitter. And, of course, it was obvious and ridiculous, and everybody was able to answer the question fairly quickly. You've already tweeted about this. You went ahead and tweeted out that you were all about making Prestwick Airport really successful. So I don't know how he planned to have that one work, but who knows? We'll continue on with that. There's so much more happening out there with spies, not just Chinese, but Russian as well. So time to catch up on some of that. I don't even know what we're going to get to and what we can't, and what we're going to start with, what's new, what's old, what's waiting since yesterday. So let's just get rolling, I guess, at this point. Let's see, opening up Pocket, opening up the Twitter feed, see what we got here. Yes, today is Election Day in North Carolina, in the 9th District, North Carolina's 9th District, where we are rerunning, for some reason. Quite honestly, I think this should have been over, at the end of the 2018 cycle. When we found out that the Republicans were cheating and caught them, I think the obvious answer for the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives was to say, fine. There were two contestants. One was caught cheating. Contestant number 2 wins the seat. That's who it belongs to. That's Dan McCready. They're making him run again against a do-over candidate by the Republicans. I really can't figure out where that makes sense and why that's supposed to be a fair solution, but what can I tell you? Everything we know about democracy is out the window these days, so why not that too? And of some interest was the fact that Trump went down there to hold a rally. We'll see whether or not that actually helps anything in North Carolina. It might not. No one knows. We'll see. A lot of people have predictions on the outcome of the race. And Rachel Bidikofer, I understand, looking to the North Carolina 9 results as some sort of indicator of how the off-year legislative elections, state legislative elections, might go in Virginia, neighboring Virginia, in this year. I don't think anybody is actually forecasting an outright big-time win for the Democratic candidate there, but it's within the realm of possibility, and the fact that it's even close is supposed to be a victory in itself, although I prefer the ones that actually come with victories where Democrats occupy the seats. But hey, maybe that's just me. Anyway, of some interest from yesterday's rally, I mean, there's plenty of interest from yesterday's rally. We probably could spend the day reading through Daniel Dale's tweets about the bizarre things that he said, the various items about which he has lied for the 85th time in a row, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought of most interest from what I was able to gather of what was going on yesterday there was encapsulated in this tweet. Trump says during the rally, as he says during practically every public appearance that he makes, Daniel notes here, Trump says there is, quote, a lot of illegal voting going on in California. Interesting. As always, there is absolutely no evidence for this. But on top of it, Daniel also observes, Trump is baselessly alleging mass voter fraud in California while campaigning in a special election necessitated by credible allegations, as he put it. I think they got him dead to rights, of Republican ballot fraud in North Carolina. I'm only here because this special election is happening, and this special election is only happening because Republicans got caught cheating in the election right here. Your votes, you people did it. But what about California? Well, California didn't actually happen. And not only is it whataboutism, which we should reject on its face, but it's false whataboutism. And you're telling it to the very people who committed that crime or had that crime or became victims, really, and many of them might feel that way, victims of that crime. Well, maybe they're not at the rally. But anyway, it was pretty incredible that, I don't know, anybody would do that, except it happened to be Donald Trump, so maybe it wasn't that incredible after all. All right, so the trial of the beginning of the trial, the beginning procedural moves in the trial of the alleged Chinese spy caught at Mar-a-Lago. There was a mundane background story that I am pretty sure I actually put aside before the flood of other information. Yes, here we are. A Miami Herald story from the weekend. I'm waiting for it to open up so I can tell you. September 6th. So that was last Friday, I guess. So probably, well, it was in the evening last Friday. So I was going to say maybe I spent Friday. Sorry that I hadn't read you this story, but I probably spent Friday night sorry that I hadn't read you the story, or at least Saturday. Anyway. The story isn't about how often or when I became sorry. I didn't tell you. KG Chinese spy. You thought I was going to say B at the end of that, right? KGB? No. KGC. KG Chinese spy or fawning Trump fan? That is the question posed in the headline here. KG Chinese spy or fawning Trump fan? Mar-a-Lago intruders trial may offer up clues. But not yet, because of what you probably heard about this yesterday. But before you heard about or didn't hear about what went on yesterday, you didn't hear about this. Sarah Blasky, Owen Churchill, Nicholas Nehamas. Well, Jay Weaver, Meng Jing, and Daniel Wren all teamed up on this Miami Herald piece. I suspect that Owen would tell you that Daniel didn't do very much. And I really don't know. I'm making it up. I'm causing friction and citing intrigue that never really happened. Sorry, everybody. Just trying to spice things up even more than they get later on. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, here's how the boring story went before. Wait a minute. What the hell's going on here? Look at this. KG Chinese Spy by Sarah Blasky. I give you all those names, right? And I scrolled down. There's a video here. I'm scrolling past the video. And then it says by Marta Oliver Cravioto and Sarah Blasky. And I'm not really sure what to make of this. So why isn't Marta's name up there on top? Why are they listing bylines all over the place? I have no idea. Maybe Marta and Sarah teamed up on the video. It looks like it might be the caption to the video. I'm a little confused. Anyway, the real focus ought to be on Yujing Zhang, And by the way, I'm going to have to lean on my now college student son who is taking some Chinese this year and try and get the pronunciation guides from him. And then maybe I'll have a better chance at getting Chinese names pronounced better. Although every once in a while, lots of you send me notes about it, and I dutifully repeat them and then say, this is what the name should sound like. And then, that's it. I forget, and I can no longer remember how it's supposed to go. But he's learning, and maybe he can teach me. Yujing Zhang. I don't know. Okay. Seemed painfully ordinary, she did. Well, that's out the window. You all know what I'm talking about. I'm hiding the good stuff from you until later. But I'll just go on the assumption that you all know the good stuff. At least that's how most people remembered the 33-year-old Chinese businesswoman until her apparent fascination with President Donald Trump led her on an ill-advised foray, to say the least, onto the grounds of his private Mar-a-Lago club in South Florida, and straight into the starring role of an apparent true-life spy thriller broadcast on cable news. Cable. I don't know. That's what makes it good. When Secret Service agents arrested her at Mar-a-Lago on March 30th, Zhang claimed she had come to attend an event on U.S.-China business relations hosted by Ivanka Trump, which means it was corrupt. Sources familiar with the investigation told the Miami Herald, they didn't say the corrupt thing. I did that. That's me. Zhang hungered to meet Ivanka Trump, so hungry, and seemed to believe she might even be able to chat about real estate with the president himself. A totally reasonable expectation for a Chinese spy. Few details have been reported about Zhang's biography and why she came to South Florida ahead of her trial in federal court in Fort Lauderdale next week. Of course, she came to South Florida for her trial. That's not what they mean. Why she came to South Florida at all. And few of those details about why she came were revealed ahead of her trial. That would have been a better way of putting things. The Miami Herald partnered with the South China Morning Post to piece together a profile of Zhang's life and her travels by speaking with Zhang's friends, family, and people in the United States who have made contact with her. Many preferred not to be named. How odd that is. Those who have met her tend to agree she was a stubborn striver who sought to attain a status far above her modest background. Sounds like a movie. And she seems to have fixated on Donald Trump, who has been advertised to China's growing business class as a plain-spoken, self-made billionaire. That ain't right. And proof that it is possible for just about anyone with the right amount of Teflon to do or be anything. Don't take him as an example. It's a very poor example. But I don't know how well that translates. Thanks to Trump's popularity in China, inventive entrepreneurs there and in the United States have pioneered a little-known online industry selling Chinese and Chinese-American business people tickets to events at the president's properties. In China, a photo with the right person, generally used to claim a personal relationship, can make or break a career. I would suggest a different system for you, but you're still stuck on communism, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to convince you of this. Maybe it's working for you. But the photo thing, in this day and age, really. Okay, Zhang seems to have so bought into China's Trump mythology that she spent tens of thousands on travel packages and Trump-branded businesses. She also recently had pitched on a paid opportunity to meet the Clintons, been pitched on this opportunity, which she scoffed at because ridiculous, asking why should she want to meet a former president, according to the sources. She wasn't interested in a seminar with the super wealthy investor Warren Buffett either. When she flew from Shanghai to the United States on March 28th, she was determined to meet the Trumps. That's perfectly reasonable, don't you think? 2 days later at Mar-a-Lago, it all went horribly wrong. Of course, it all goes horribly wrong much earlier than that. And the idea that you can just fly here from China and say, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to meet Donald Trump in exchange for cash is a pretty serious sign that something is way, way, way wrong with our own system. But okay. 2 days later at Mar-a-Lago, it all went horribly wrong. Ivanka Trump wasn't even in Florida, nor did the first daughter ever plan a summit on Chinese-U.S. business relations as Zhang claimed. And Secret Service agents found a trove of electronics on Zhang, including a thumb device they believed was loaded with malware. Sounds like they're hedging a little bit. Though they later walked that back. Interesting. Calling it a possible false positive. Oh, that's something. A subsequent search of her Palm Beach hotel room uncovered a device meant to detect hidden cameras. That's always a good idea going to Mar-a-Lago, quite honestly. And stacks of cash, nearly $8,000 in all. Both of those things, frankly, are pretty wise to take with you when you go to Mar-a-Lago, although I don't know if $8,000 is going to be enough. Stacks of cash, $8,000. I mean, okay. Strip club, it's an expensive night out, but I guess we're talking about relatively small bills or small stacks. I'm not really sure. Okay, so even hundreds, I guess it's, all right, fine. Anyway, cash and things to detect hidden cameras are wise to take with you, if you ask me. The FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami immediately began investigating Zhang as a possible spy, folding her case into an ongoing investigation opened late last year into potential Chinese espionage at Mar-a-Lago and South Florida. Zhang, who had spent the last 5 months in pretrial detention, has been charged by indictment with 2 federal crimes: trespassing on restricted property and lying to a federal agent. Next week, a jury, maybe, will determine how at least part of her story ends during a trial that begins September 9th. That was yesterday. Guess what happened? You know, and if you don't, you're probably not going to guess. Though she has not been charged under the Espionage Act, prosecutors have filed classified evidence in Zhang's case, indicating the existence of an ongoing parallel investigation into matters regarding national security that potentially involve her and others. The FBI's counterintelligence squad is investigating whether the Chinese national was working as an agent of the Chinese government or had been in contact with officials in Beijing before her trip to Mar-a-Lago, according to sources familiar with the probe. And I think probably almost anybody on their way to the United States has some contact with the Chinese government before they go, though that doesn't necessarily mean a sit-down with the spy agency. They keep pretty close tabs on their people, as far as I know. Prosecutors have suggested they could bring more charges against Zhang in the future. Currently facing a maximum of 6 years in federal prison, Zhang's best possible defense seems premised on presenting herself as a bumbling foreign tourist lost in an unfamiliar world. Many Americans are lost in an unfamiliar world in the era of Trump, so I guess it might work. Experts on Chinese espionage say it's an act they've seen before, and that playing the role of a misguided, Trump-obsessed businesswoman could be the perfect cover for a spy. Mar-a-Lago and other Trump properties, where the president is known to loosely discuss national security affairs, present perfect targets for foreign infiltration. And that's as much or more Donald Trump's fault and the Trump of his enabling Republicans than the Chinese. They're just like, why don't you just walk around with a bucket and see what intelligence falls into it? Robert Anderson, a 20-year FBI veteran who served as the assistant director of the FBI's counterintelligence division, said that whatever her relationship with Beijing, the fact that Zhang was able to get into the president's private club at all was a significant intelligence gain for the Chinese. Anderson said the Chinese security apparatus is known for using citizens to make dummy runs at targets of interest. We have heard this. The simple fact that she could get in and get to where she got is of tremendous intelligence value already, said Anderson. When the Chinese now insert trained or professional long-term intelligence assets, think how hard they would be to catch, because those people are going to act much different than Zhang. Watching the once poised Zhang stumble into recent court appearances, her thin hands clutched together at her chest, she certainly seemed less a secret agent on a nefarious mission than a scared young woman engulfed by a political maelstrom she couldn't possibly have predicted. Growing up in China, Zhang lived with her family in an old house in an ordinary neighborhood in the heart of Shanghai, one of the world's largest cities. Her father made a modest living as a mechanic for a local taxi company. She was shy and enjoyed watching Grey's Anatomy and Prison Break. Might come in handy at some point. And dreaming of going to Europe, according to a social media account that has been dormant for years. After graduating from Shanghai Finance and Economic University with a business degree in 2008, Zhang obtained a low-level position at AIG Huatai, a joint venture between American Investment Group, AIG, and China's Huatai Securities. Huatai. I get no idea. It's Huatai. Once again, I could use pronunciation guides for that, but I bet I won't see it before I finish the show. All right. According to Chinese securities records. So, okay. After Zhang left the company, it was later renamed Huatai Pinebridge in the early months of 2013, around the time her mother passed away. Scant public information exists about her next steps. She did show signs of ambition, said an ex-boyfriend, who said he dated Zhang briefly in 2013 and asked to be quoted only by his last name, Yao. Yao. Yes, Yao. I think she really just wanted to succeed, Yao said. The more ordinary things are in your family. There you are. The more shortcuts you have to take to succeed. Ah, gotcha. Watching her struggle to meet deadlines at work, while she was crippled by a shoddy laptop and a tendency to procrastinate, Yao didn't think Zhang was capable of achieving her lofty goals, he said. By the time she showed up at Mar-a-Lago in 2019, however, Zhang seemed to have achieved a measure of success. She worked in Shanghai's cosmopolitan financial world at a flashy modern business, one registered in her father's name. The mechanic? Okay. Representatives of the wealth management company advertised their ability to act as liaisons for Chinese clients around the globe, pitching everything from attending the Oscars to investment opportunities in education-focused tech startup companies, a connection Zhang may have made during a December 2017 trip to San Francisco. What's a company like that doing registered in her father's name? Now, I mean, I don't know. I have no basis for this, but it strikes me as the sort of thing like that if you were an espionage front, the government might say, yeah, we'll register it in the name of somebody who couldn't possibly have anything to do with this. So that'll be our signal to ourselves that we're dealing with one of our front companies in case we forget. This taxi cab mechanic isn't going to be running a financial consultancy. But maybe he's a savant. Who knows? Or maybe he had the money to pay to register her business and she's just faking the whole thing. I got no idea. Zhang kept thousands of dollars in expense accounts in the United States for dining with clients, drove a BMW, and owned a home in Shanghai valued at $1.3 million. She told the judge at a court hearing. The median home price in Shanghai, the world's third priciest real estate market, is $872,555. Wow, right down to the dollar. The ambitious young woman expressed no interest in politics, according to two sources familiar with her correspondence. Rather, she seemed interested in the Trumps because of their real estate connections and how a link with the powerful American family might boost her profile in business in China and even, she hoped, make her millions. In the past 3 years, Zhang made 5 trips to the United States and on multiple occasions visited Trump properties. How curious. In September of 2018, Zhang signed into the public Wi-Fi of a Trump-branded property, according to sources familiar with Zhang's travel. It is unclear where that property was, at least to you and me. They must know where it is, right? Although the sources say she claims to have visited the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. In February, Zhang sent the equivalent of $20,000 spent it on a U.S. travel package that included a ticket to an event at Mar-a-Lago at the end of March. The package also included tours of New York and Miami real estate, according to sources familiar with her travel plans. Then, disaster. And that sounds like it needs disaster music. A day after Zhang's 33rd birthday, and just 2 days before she was set to fly to the United States, the travel agent who sold her the ticket told Zhang the Mar-a-Lago event had been canceled. Right, exactly. And I don't know what else to say.
Unacceptable!
Yeah, it's probably what happened in the office there. Anyway, so she was told before she left that it was canceled, so the mystery deepens. Undeterred, Zhang persisted. She persisted. Still she persisted, traveling halfway around the world to try her luck at getting into Mar-a-Lago for a gala she's been told wasn't going to happen. That does sound suspicious. She was clearly, quote, up to something nefarious, a federal magistrate judge declared in April, but what that was has never been clear. Next up, intruder at the Winter White House. This is where we pick up the story, right? When Zhang approached Mar-a-Lago in a taxi just a bit after noon on March 30th, 2019, the president was in town, which always means extra layers of security. And although Trump was out golfing, what do you know? At the moment Zhang showed up, yeah, I mean, it's not like, it ain't exactly Heisenberg going on. You know where the guy's going to be. So when Zhang showed up, members of his family were still at the club. No one simply walks into Mar-a-Lago. One does not simply walk into Mar-a-Lago, as we're told here, ever, whether the president is there or not. Yes, they do. But somehow Zhang made it inside, briefly. She disembarked from her taxi at a Secret Service security checkpoint in a parking lot across the street from the club. She was sporting a gray dress. That's not really sporting, but okay. A purse packed with electronics and a litany of half-baked excuses for her presence. She said she was there to use the pool, according to court testimony by Secret Service agent Samuel Ivanovich, another oddity, an eager young agent overseeing security at Mar-a-Lago that day. The club's pools are open only to family and friends of members who pay $200,000 to join the elite club in one of America's richest towns, but that's not really true. It's open to guests as well, depending on a list, I'm sure, but they didn't want to give all that detail out there, but it's got to be true. You know how he operates, right? Okay, so she said she was there to use the pool, which ordinarily might not be available to her. The club's pools, open only to, they say, members and family, but apparently flustered by a perceived language barrier and under the impression she might be the daughter of a member, Mar-a-Lago security allowed Zhang to enter, Ivanovich said. While the Secret Service manages security while Trump is in town, club staff manages the guest list and tells agents whether someone is permitted to enter the club. What a great arrangement. I'm sure it's working fantastically. We'll continue with this story and get to the good stuff next. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on it. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue finding out a little bit more about the background of our Chinese spy suspect here, and then get on to the news that, I don't know if he's even teasing you anymore at this point. But let's get a little bit more background info here. The last thing we learned before exiting for the break was that while the Secret Service manages security when Trump is there, club staff manages the guest list and I knew there had to be a guest list, right? So obviously other people are allowed to use the pool. They're guests. And, okay, so that's the story. The Secret Service only deals with things when the president is there. Otherwise, club staff manage it, and I guess they manage the first level of security too. And clearly in this case, they're able to wave people through even when the Secret Service stops them and has questions. And I don't doubt that that's the case, because it's terrible, terrible management, terrible for national security, terrible for the president's physical security, about which I care a little bit less, let's say, than national security. But okay. And I don't know why they put up with it. They just do, probably because Trump will throw a tantrum and get people fired from good jobs in the Secret Service unless they bend to his will. It's probably just another of the high levels at which he has warped all sorts of rules, process, and procedure with his temper tantrums. Anyway, a valet in a golf cart then drove Zhang to a second and final checkpoint in front of the main entrance, which is a great place to do another check. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. What's the big deal? There, she paused briefly before proceeding through a metal detector as Secret Service agents searched her bag, Ivanovich testified. She was carrying 4 cell phones, sure, why not, a laptop for the pool, several SIM cards, an external hard drive, and the thumb drive. Mar-a-Lago does not prohibit electronic devices, and Zhang was granted passage through the Secret Service checkpoint because why in the world would anyone object to that collection of electronics on their way to the pool? No bathing suit, but whatever. But, given the news that we received yesterday, maybe the no bathing suit thing makes more sense than you think. Our checkpoints are for items that are restricted from secured sites, such as weapons, explosive biological hazards, not, whether somebody brings in a certain amount of cell phones or laptops or hard drives, Ivanovich testified, which is to say they have, I guess, the lowest trained Secret Service security people possible. And nobody takes it upon themselves to say, phones aren't prohibited, laptops aren't prohibited, SIM cards aren't prohibited, thumb drives aren't prohibited, hard drives aren't prohibited, stacks of cash aren't prohibited, but all together in one purse from a person with a language barrier that we're not sure should be here at all, who says she's coming to use the pool but hasn't brought a bathing suit and isn't on any kind of a list. No red flags at all. Well, eventually a red flag goes up. Anyway, someone intervenes. Here comes the red flag. Not club security or a Secret Service agent, but a suspicious receptionist trained, as are all staff, to know the faces of club members and frequent guests and to politely stop people who might not belong. Because that's the way it is around the president. Even if he's not president, he just doesn't like people that he thinks doesn't belong. Ever. The receptionist didn't recognize Zhang and intercepted the interloper in the main foyer, or foyer if you prefer. The Secret Service, security, nope. The receptionist. The receptionist asked Zhang several times in English, because that's the language we speak here, why she was there, according to the agent's testimony. Zhang eventually told her she planned to attend an event that was being hosted that night. Now, of course, I guess I should say they probably speak a little bit of Chinese there with all the events that they hold for the Chinese community. Or rather, that they pay to hold there. But, you can't expect every receptionist to be able to do that. Zhang eventually told her she planned to attend an event that was being hosted that night. Zhang explained to the receptionist she had come early to take pictures and familiarize herself with the property, according to the agent's testimony. But the gala scheduled for that evening, a safari night hosted by Trump's sister, Elizabeth Trump Grau, had been canceled. Had Zhang told the club staff she didn't realize that, they may have simply turned her away, chalking up her presence to a misunderstanding. But instead, Zhang insisted she had bought a ticket for a United Nations friendship event and flashed an invite written in Chinese on her phone. She never acknowledged having been told the event was off, Ivanovich said. Aha. The receptionist flagged Zhang to the Secret Service. Agents began to question her in the lobby and soon after moved her to a nearby building off the main property and then to the Secret Service office in West Palm Beach. Zhang repeated to the agents that she was at Mar-a-Lago for a U.S.-China business event hosted by Ivanka Trump, according to sources familiar with the interrogation, and no one believed her. Next up, China's business diplomacy. Unbeknownst to the agents interrogating her at the time, and how could that possibly be, Zhang had in fact bought a ticket to a Mar-a-Lago event that evening, but she may not have known the event's real name. The event was called Spying on the President, an operation of the Chinese Communist government, and they didn't tell anybody. The March 30th Safari Night event had not been billed on Chinese language social media as what it was, a charity gala for a group run by a local pastor. Rather, it had been advertised as a Chinese business summit, a place for people to gain access to the halls of American power. That poses an interesting possibility. Pardon me. That is, could it be as brazen as they simply say, it doesn't matter what events are scheduled for that night. We will simply tell our mostly Chinese-only speaking audience on our website that everything is a Chinese-American business event. And they'll just go there and be confused. And who cares? And probably they would end up being confused anyway, even if it was legitimately a Chinese-American business event. But if it's not, no skin off our nose, we've already got the money. Anyway, so there you have it. It had been advertised as a Chinese business summit, not a safari night, whatever that was supposed to be. One of the event's most prominent promoters was another successful Chinese-born entrepreneur, a South Floridian named Cindy Yang. We all know her. She had parlayed her chain of Asian day spas into a minor role in South Florida's GOP politics and a presence at Trump-branded clubs, including Mar-a-Lago. Of course, because, we know the nature of her business. That's always going to gain entry into Donald Trump's circles. The man who sold Zhang the ticket was a Yang associate named Charles Li, a Chinese travel agent who bundles events sold by vendors like Yang. Li, who goes by Dr. Li, which I guess he isn't, or Prince Charles, which he also isn't, runs an online travel agency called the United Nations Chinese Friendship Association. Now, that's something that the United Nations should probably put an end to, but I gather that if you're just willing to do it illegally and more or less below the radar, they never find out about it. Anyway, they purport actually to be sponsored by the United Nations, despite no official connection to the organization. The UN nomenclature may explain Zhang's seemingly baffling explanation for coming to Mar-a-Lago, her purchase of a ticket for a United Nations Chinese friendship event. She may have also confused Elizabeth Trump Grau, the Safari Nights host, with Ivanka. I guess that's possible. I confuse Chinese names all the time, so I suppose it's possible that it could happen in reverse. Li's travel packages, promoted on more than a dozen websites, written in Chinese and Russian. Yes, that's right, written in Chinese and Russian, because it's all the same, claimed to be part of Chinese President Xi Jinping's business diplomacy initiative. And why not, right? Sometimes the events Yang and Li promoted were charity galas. Other times, they were fundraisers co-hosted by the Republican National Committee and Trump Victory, the president's re-election campaign. Yang is currently under investigation by the Department of Justice regarding whether her political ticket sales violated federal laws that prohibit non-citizens without green cards from financing political campaigns. That's the least of the problems, if you ask me. Yang did not respond to reporters' requests for comment. She has previously said she never violated any rules or laws. I love to say that. That's a great thing to say. Reached briefly by a reporter, this is Charles Li. Li said he never charged attendees. Of course not. Although documents and social media posts reviewed by the Herald showed Li would request thousands of dollars from attendees. So, I charge nothing, or I charge thousands. What did I say? Did I say nothing? I meant thousands, now that you mention it. Oh, you mean these dollars, right? And a receipt entered as evidence in Zhang's defense shows that she paid a company linked to him for her travel package. Next up, trapped and alone. Zhang has spent the past 5 months bouncing between jails in South Florida. That's more than Jeffrey Epstein ever did. While federal investigators combed through every detail of her life, something that also didn't happen to Jeffrey Epstein. A call log provided by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office revealed that Zhang passed time dialing down a list of local bail bond agents despite having been denied bond on April 15th. Wow. So I guess she didn't understand that. She was asking me what's next, what happens next, as if she don't know, said bond agent Francine Adderley. Zhang also called other local numbers, including those of real estate agents. Sure. One who answered told reporters Zhang sounded crazy as she repeatedly asked him for financial help while trying to convince the man in broken English that he somehow knew her. He didn't, he said. At the same time, Zhang has rejected other attempts to help. She refused to speak with her public defenders and eventually moved to fire them and represent herself in court, something permitted by the judge only after her mental health history was thoroughly examined. Another thing that didn't happen to Jeffrey Epstein or the President of the United States. She had reasons for not wanting an attorney, Zhang told the judge at the time, but she refused to share them, glancing nervously around the court and at one point demanding to know the names of everyone there for, quote, security reasons. I suppose, though, if you've come out of the Chinese system and they tell you, yeah, your lawyer is being given to you by the government, that would probably kind of panic you. The judge at the time asked Zhang if she had been pressured or threatened by anyone into the decision. She said no. A man who answered Zhang's father's phone and said he was a friend of the family told reporters at the South China Morning Post that Zhang had fired her attorneys because she didn't want too much news media exposure. And her understanding was lawyers would normally speak to media about the case. He declined to answer more questions. As the months dragged on, Zhang began to look increasingly lost. In her first court appearances, Zhang sat with a straight back, taking notes on a legal pad and asking questions in English, prompting a magistrate judge to comment on her intelligence. Lately, she's sat in court slumped to one side, answering the judge's questions in confusing non sequiturs translated from Chinese. Maybe it's what if the translator has no idea what's going on and is just babbling? Other times, she simply stares straight ahead, smiling, shaking her head yes or no, but refusing to answer out loud. Judge Roy Altman, who is overseeing this Zhang case, seems to believe it is an act. He has repeatedly accused her of playing games with the court. I know full well that you understand what I am saying to you, both in English and in Mandarin, Altman said to her at her last court appearance in August, after Zhang repeatedly defied his order that she answer a question out loud. Recently, federal prosecutors filed a new batch of classified evidence with the judge regarding the secretive national security investigation. That filing raises the possibility that they know things about Zhang that the rest of us don't, such as her travels, her finances, and her contacts. I hope they know something. Her case may not be an isolated incident. In February, a Chinese student was sentenced to 1 year in prison for taking photos of the Naval Air Station in Key West. But for every red flag of espionage in Zhang's case, there may also be an innocent explanation. The hidden camera detector found in her hotel room isn't so odd for a lone female traveler from China, where it's not uncommon for voyeurs to hide cameras in hotels, or traveler to a Trump property, where it's common practice. Carrying 4 cell phones is more likely an indicator of a wannabe social media influencer than a spy. The malware could have been a false positive, as the feds later suggested. And the obsessive desire to reach Trump and his family with little thought of potential consequences could be just what it sounds like, the stubborn fixation of a troubled young woman struggling to find her way. That doesn't mean she wasn't a threat, said Anderson, a former FBI agent. This woman may or may not have even known that what she was doing was actually being monitored or manipulated by the Chinese government, he said. These are witting assets. There are witting assets, and then there are unwitting assets. Okay, so they're not sure which one she is. Well, strange twist in the story yesterday that you may have heard about by now. Everyone's been tweeting about it all day. Here's the NBC News report about it. Ready for the headline? Underwear blunder. How do you like that? Underwear blunder stalls trial of Chinese women accused of trespassing at Mar-a-Lago. Sounds like a real blunder. Or maybe not. Maybe entirely purposeful. Yujing Zhang is acting as her own attorney during the federal trial on accusations she lied to a Secret Service agent and trespassed at President Donald Trump's Palm Beach Club, NBC News says without giving anything away. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it is NBC is the host for this, but it's an Associated Press, AP story. So we'll credit that correctly, but I don't think there's a byline on it. Okay. The trial of a Chinese businesswoman charged with lying to a Secret Service agent and trespassing at Mar-a-Lago bogged down Monday before jury selection over her lack of underwear. What do we say about that? Her lack of underwear. No, it's her lack of underwear.
Unacceptable!
Maybe it's that. People driving by. Armando was on his way to the trial, and she didn't have any underwear on. And then that happened. And then who knows what else?
Thank you, God.
Maybe that would have come into things. Here we go.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Yes, it is.
You get nothing. You lose.
That's right.
Good day, sir.
Well, in some cases, people may have considered that a win, but
That is not how this works!
there we go. We got that. That definitely belongs here. That's not what you're supposed to do when you show up for trial, and you're your own lawyer as well. So how about that? So somehow jury selection bogs down over her lack of underwear. The latest bizarre moment in a case that has been filled with them. Before the potential jurors were brought into the courtroom, Yujing Zhang told Judge Roy Altman that she was wearing brown jail garb instead of civilian clothing because she had not been provided any underwear. Defendants generally wear civilian clothing during trials to not prejudice jurors against them. Yes, I understand that, and that makes her decision to come in jail garb that much more confusing. And then the underwear thing, okay. So she's wearing brown jail garb because there's no underwear. And I don't really know what that, okay. After some discussion about which agency was supposed to provide Zhang with underwear, she was taken to a holding cell and changed into a copper-colored blouse and khaki slacks found in her hotel room after her March arrest. So, does that mean she didn't bring any underwear with her from China, or they lost the underwear somewhere in between? I don't know. Zhang is acting as her own attorney during the federal trial, much to Altman's frustration. He tried again on Monday to change the 33-year-old Shanghai consultant's mind, as he did during every pretrial hearing since she fired her public defenders in June and urged her to let them try the case. When he demanded that she answer yes or no, she went into a long monologue in Mandarin. Altman cut her off before it could be translated, and finally she said she didn't want them, the lawyers, I think, not the underwear. He spoke to Zhang sternly Monday after she told him, "I don't know why I'm here." And she said she wasn't prepared because she said she thought the trial had been canceled, not her underwear. You know precisely why you're here, Altman told her. He has repeatedly accused her at previous hearings of playing games. Zhang primarily used a translator on Monday, but at one point told Altman she hadn't spoken Mandarin in months and was having a hard time following along. "You speak Chinese. You are from China," Altman replied. Okay. Yeah. What else have we got here? Soon after, 60 potential jurors were brought into the courtroom and jury selection began. Several told Altman they have negative feelings about Trump, but Altman, a Trump appointee, assured them the president has no direct connection to the case. Well, that's not going to come up in this case yet, I don't think. Broward County is a Democratic stronghold. Jury selection was expected to take some time before opening statements are made later Monday. Zhang was arrested March 30th. We all know about this. The United Nations angle on this, that she came to take pictures. By the way, I guess she would take pictures on her phone. I just was just going to say, geez, she said she was going to use the pool. She had no bathing suit. She said she was going to use take pictures. She has no camera. But then again, she said she was going to be on trial. She has no underwear. So really, what do we get out of this? Not much more. Okay. So that wasn't as shocking and surprising as it sounded like from the headline. It sounded like jury selection bogged down over her lack of underwear, which was being tweeted around all day yesterday. Like she had showed up and flashed the jury and they all couldn't decide whether or not they were prejudiced against either the client or Donald Trump or what have you, because they were mesmerized by the fact that she had no underwear on, and that didn't happen. So that's not exciting or surprising at all, but that's the latest on this thing. So, yeah, between that and Cindy Yang, and has that case gone away? The whole she runs a whole sex slave ring at massage parlors. Is that people no longer talking about that? Is that not true? Have they backtracked on that as well? It's difficult to tell, but just one of many items to keep an eye on, especially as winter approaches. We're in the beginning of the fall season, or I guess we haven't reached it quite yet. But in a few days, we'll be officially meteorologically in fall, or is it? I don't know which one terminology, but there's the unofficial beginning of fall, of course, at the Labor Day holiday. But I guess we have the autumnal equinox coming up shortly, and that'll put us into the fall. But winter is the Mar-a-Lago season, and the president is going to be there frequently, and I feel like they still haven't straightened out the security situation there, and they haven't. So, that might be of some interest to those of us who live in the United States and are concerned with its national security, let's say. All right. What else have I got here? Oh, yes. You know what else I should be telling you? It turns out that the story that I stopped reading yesterday about Jerry Falwell's situation at Liberty University got most interesting after I broke it off, after I said, all right, well, now we know a little bit more about the self-dealing, and that's the serious part of things down at Liberty University, but I guess the crazier part of things was still to come. But it's a huge article, and it might take forever to get through. But I don't know whether we're ever really going to get back to reading this thing, although I bet we'd have a great time with it. But if you didn't read the story, it turns out that the rest of the story is about Jerry Falwell Jr. is completely sex obsessed. Everybody's a little bit sex obsessed, I guess, but he's completely sex obsessed to the point where, he's not a minister, but he heads this, allegedly conservative Christian university. And, this is one of those places where you're not allowed to drink or dance, and there's strict dating rules and all that sort of stuff. And apparently, Jerry Falwell Jr. has dedicated his life to running around telling everybody bragging on intimate details of his sex life and how many times and how often he has sex with his wife and the size of his genitalia, and pictures of her keep coming. We were told that Michael Cohen had to hush up, personal intimate pictures of his wife. Apparently he just goes around passing them out to everybody and bragging on everything. It's crazy, which is completely not what Falwell is supposed to be doing, which is supposed to be the big scandal here. So you missed out. I didn't realize that until I was reading. I still haven't read the rest of the article, but until I was reading tweets from Josh Marshall and others who were saying, wow, Josh was saying, I'd love to see the editorial notes on this piece and talk about the decision to bury the truly bizarre details so far down in the article. It's just insane. So, like I said, it would take the rest of the show to read through this, and what you'd get out of it is Jerry Falwell runs around telling people he has, a big unit. I don't know whether it's true or not, but apparently that's really big deal to him, and he's rather insistent that other people see it, and then rather insistent that other people see pictures of his wife, and it's weird, and then they end up attracting young personal trainer types and getting into strange relationships with them and giving them millions of dollars, and then we're back to the self-dealing issue later on. But yeah, I did want to, I wanted to make you aware of that. And I wanted to remind you once again of how many Liberty University graduates, and especially Liberty University Law School graduates, are currently embedded in the federal government, thanks both to George W. Bush and the cheaters in his administration, and now the same going on in the Trump administration. And according to some of the voices in the article, it's questionable whether or not those people got any of the professional training that they are alleged to have. And even if they had, they would be cheating anyway, given how they got their job in the United States government and the protections being afforded to them that they really don't deserve. Okay, more information. Yesterday I mentioned CNN's story about the U.S. spy extracted from inside Russia in 2017. Perhaps we can spend a little bit of time on that and give you later developments on that story as well. Jim Sciutto's story broken yesterday. Exclusive U.S. extracted top spy from inside Russia in 2017. In a previously undisclosed secret mission, the United States successfully extracted from Russia one of its highest-level covert sources inside the Russian government, multiple Trump administration officials with direct knowledge told CNN. A person directly involved in the discussion said that the removal of the Russian was driven in part by concerns that President Donald Trump and his administration repeatedly mishandled classified intelligence and could contribute to exposing the covert source as a spy. Doing things like meeting alone with Putin and having all the notes destroyed, or meeting alone with Sergei Lavrov and Kislyak in the Oval Office, and having only TASS reporters present. At any of those points, this information could have been conveyed and they would never know. The decision to carry out the extraction occurred soon after, in fact, a May 2017 meeting in the Oval Office in which Trump discussed highly classified intelligence with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and then Russian Ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. The intelligence concerning ISIS in Syria had been provided by Israel. But I guess that raised some suspicions that, he might give away everything else as well. The disclosure to the Russians by the president, though not about the Russian spy specifically, prompted intelligence officials to renew earlier discussions about the potential risk of exposure, according to the source directly involved in the matter. And somebody did pose a great Twitter question or comment about this. Imagine what they had to tell this guy when they ended up showing up wherever they showed up to extract him and why they had to do it. That must have come as a surprise. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Let's see, much more to cover here and other stories to tuck away for later on, just making sure that we can keep up to date on these things. Oh, that's not going to work. That is a firewalled story, so we'll get rid of that one and move on from there. Okay, so after the meeting with Kislyak and Lavrov, intelligence officials in the United States say, yeah, this guy's probably not safe. Trump could accidentally give away the store on that one at any moment, or purposely give away the store. The disclosure to the Russians wasn't about the spy specifically, but it did make them nervous. At the time, then CIA Director Mike Pompeo, I've heard he's still in business out there, told other senior Trump administration officials that too much information was coming out regarding the covert source, known as an asset. On extraction, or exfiltration, as such an operation is referred to by intelligence officials, this exfiltration is an extraordinary remedy when U.S. intelligence believes an asset is in immediate danger. So they're covering their tracks well, but basically Pompeo at this point worries that Trump's going to give it all away, but happily takes the job as Secretary of State later. Maybe not so much because he believes in Trump, but because he doesn't want to be the head of the CIA when this goes to hell. The source was considered the highest level source for the U.S. inside the Kremlin, high up in the national security infrastructure, according to the source familiar with the matter and a former senior intelligence official. According to CNN sources, the spy had access to Putin and could even provide images of documents on the Russian leader's desk. The covert source provided information for more than a decade, according to the sources, and an initial effort to extract the spy, after exposure concerns, was rebuffed by the informant. CNN is reporting the additional information about the covert source who was extracted from Russia in 2017. The information, which adds further understanding to the value of the informant, was initially withheld by CNN, but was subsequently reported by the New York Times Monday evening. A U.S. official said before the secret operation there was media speculation about the existence of such a covert source, and such coverage or public speculation poses risks to the safety of anyone a foreign government suspects may be involved. This official did not identify any public reporting to that effect at the time of this decision, and CNN could not find any related reference in media reports. Asked for comment, Brittany Bramall, the CIA Director of Public Affairs, told CNN's narrative that the Central Intelligence Agency makes life or death decisions based on anything other than objective analysis and sound collection is simply false. Is that a narrative? I didn't see it in here. Misguided speculation that the president's handling of our nation's most sensitive intelligence, which he has access to each and every day, drove an alleged exfiltration operation is inaccurate. So, okay, that means it's accurate. Got it. A spokesperson for Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declined to comment. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham said CNN's reporting is not only incorrect, it has the potential to put lives in danger, which means it's correct and Trump has put lives in danger. Got it. The removal happened at a time of wide concern in the intelligence community about mishandling of intelligence by Trump and his administration. Those concerns were described to CNN by 5 sources who served in the Trump administration, intelligence agencies, and Congress. Those concerns continued to grow in the period after Trump's Oval Office meeting with Kislyak. Oops, I've lost my place here thanks to a stray text. Here we are. After his meeting with Kislyak and Lavrov, weeks after the decision to extract the spy, in July, I wanted to say June there, but instead I draw it out like a Southerner. July 2017, Trump met privately with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit in Hamburg and took the unusual step of confiscating the interpreter's notes. Afterward, why don't we talk about that every day? I don't know. Afterward, intelligence officials again expressed concern that the president may have improperly discussed classified intelligence with Russia, according to an intelligence source with knowledge of the intelligence community's response to the Trump-Putin meeting. How else do you respond to it, right? I confiscate the translator's notes. If I'm in the CIA, I say, I don't know how to read that other than, he's compromised something. He may be compromised himself. He may have compromised assets, but I would call in everybody I can if I care about them surviving. So what else are you going to do? They may be wrong, but how else can you take that? Confiscating the notes. Knowledge of the Russian covert source's existence was highly restricted within the U.S. government and intelligence agencies. According to one source, there was, quote, no equal alternative inside the Russian government, providing both insight and information on Putin. The secret removal of the high-level Russian asset has left the U.S. without one of its key sources in the inner workings of the Kremlin and the plans and thinking of the Russian president at a time when tensions between the two nations have been growing. The U.S. intelligence community considers Russia one of the 2 greatest threats to U.S. national security, along with China. The impact would be huge because it's so hard to develop sources like that in any denied area. And I guess that would be like areas where they would just deny letting you walk around, a denied area, particularly Russia, because the surveillance and security there is so stringent. A former senior intelligence official told CNN, you can't reacquire a capability like that, which, of course, might very well have been the reason that Trump did what he did. And he may have been I don't know whether he was, drawn into giving something. We don't know whether he gave anything away at all. They just feared that he might. Or it may have been a straight-up request. Tell me what you're getting. Or it may have been just Trump bragging. I even know what's on your desk, Vlad. I won't tell you how. Thinking that, that'll keep him in the dark, and not really. So I don't know. I'm not certain what I think Trump really did here. Or I'm clear on what the CIA thinks, and I think I'm inclined to believe them, even though, ordinarily you would want to take with a grain of salt what the CIA is telling you. It's not hard to believe that Trump can't compartmentalize information. He can't process regular information as it is. And he might think that he might just be a plain old straight up Russian asset where he says, "Ooh, I heard about a major breach in your security, Vladimir, and I thought I'd tell you about it as a favor or to curry favor with you." Or it might really be he could just be a dumb old idiot and and not being particularly sensitive to the realities of the relationship between the United States and Russia, really thinks he has a personal friendship with Putin that's worth something. And as part of his effort to impress Vladimir Putin, who he knows to be an old intelligence operative himself, he thought he would drop some information about what great intelligence assets he's got as the United States president, and then he'll think I'm really cool. But instead, it ends up compromising the assets and doesn't do anything to make Vladimir Putin think he's cool, because why would Vladimir Putin care about thinking Donald Trump is cool? Anyway, not certain which theory is operating here. The decision to pull the asset out of Russia was the culmination of many months of mounting fear within the intelligence community. At the end of the Obama administration, U.S. intelligence officials had already expressed concerns about the safety of this spy and other Russian assets, given the length of their cooperation with the United States, according to former senior intelligence officials. Those concerns grew in early 2017 after the U.S. intelligence community released its public report on Russian meddling in the 2016 election, which said Putin himself ordered the operation. The intelligence community also shared a classified version of the report with the incoming Trump administration, and it included highly protected details on the sources behind the intelligence. Senior U.S. intelligence officials considered extracting at least one Russian asset at the time, but did not do so, according to the former senior intelligence official. In the first months of his administration, Trump's handling of classified intelligence in general further concerned intelligence officials. Ultimately, they decided to launch the difficult operation to remove an asset who had been working for the U.S. for years. The president was informed in advance of the extraction, along with a small number of senior officials. Details of the extraction itself remained secret, and the whereabouts of the asset today are unknown to CNN, or at least that is alleged to be the case, because this morning's developments included discussions of the news agencies that claimed to know exactly who this person was and where they were, where she was. And at the minimum, we have this interesting exchange spotted this morning from Julia Davis on Twitter. And Julia Davis News has come up before in various contexts. She is an investigative journalist, independent, I guess, but has posted bylines in the Washington Post, the Daily Beast. She's a Russian media analyst, and I frequently see her tweets on what she says is going on in Russian state media. And we just have to take her word for it, of course, because I don't speak Russian. But she appears to be, she ain't pro-Trump. We'll say that. And that makes her a fun source. But I really don't know anything about her or anything about the quality of her translations. But she seems to be, mostly I see her tweeting out stories about how Russian news programs laugh nightly about Putin's easy control over Donald Trump and how he's able to lead him around by the nose. That's certainly something I like to think might actually be, well, I hate to think might actually be true, but I like to think it when I think of damaging stories that might once and for all rid us of Donald Trump. But since none of them actually do, I guess it's just a bit of an indulgence to continue to believe that she might be telling the truth, but who knows? I mean, it may very well be the case. Of course, it could just be pure trolling as well. And maybe that's where we'll go with this story afterwards. But Julia Davis today says, after the decision to extract the spy, Trump met privately with Putin and took the unusual step, of course, of confiscating the interpreter's notes. Intel officials again expressed concern that the president may have improperly discussed classified intelligence with Russia. That's her reaction to yesterday's story. But in addition to all of that, she tweets this morning that she is actually personally aware, she says, of the identity and whereabouts of this extracted intelligence asset, and that she's just, kept it secret because there's no particular good reason to report it other than to put the guy in danger. She's tweeting this morning to Ken Delanian at NBC News, who I don't know whether he spilled the beans on it or simply said that the information was available or what. But yeah, here's Ken Delanian's tweet. New possible Russian spy for CIA is living in the Washington area. That's the headline on a piece tweeted around 13 hours ago. And Julia Davis just asking the question, why would this need to be reported? And, she goes on to say in her tweeting that, she knows who the person is too, but it never occurred to her as a good idea to simply say, oh yeah, by the way, if you're hunting for him, he's living in the Washington, D.C. area. But for the safety of myself and the people around me, I will just say it's not me. And I've never lived in Russia, so I don't know why anyone would have reason to believe that. But don't come looking for me. It's not me. And it's not any of my neighbors, to my knowledge, either. But, you never know where they might plant somebody around here. But that's Ken Delanian thought it was a great idea, as did Tatiana Chistikova, who shares the byline with him on this story. Possible Russian spy for CIA now living in Washington area. The former Russian government official who had a job with access to secrets was living openly under his true name, which maybe isn't a great idea on his part, but I guess that would make it easy to identify who he is, because whatever. I mean, if a new Russian guy moves into town and says what his name is, and you Google him and it turns out he was a high-level Putin aide, you might say, I bet that's the guy. A former senior Russian official is living in the Washington area under U.S. government protection. Current and former government officials tell NBC News they are withholding the man's name and other key details at the request of U.S. officials who say reporting the information could endanger his life. Why they don't say he's living in Kansas City, I don't know. Yet the former Russian official who had a job with access to secrets was living openly under his true name. And I guess that's an interesting question, right, for NBC News to pose. Why would that happen? But then I guess you got to weigh the value of reporting that versus everything else. An NBC News correspondent went to the man's house in the Washington area and rang the doorbell. 5 minutes later, two young men in an SUV came racing up the street and parked immediately adjacent to the correspondent's car. The men, who identified themselves only as friends of the Russian, asked the correspondent what he was doing there. A former senior national security official said the men were likely U.S. government agents monitoring the Russian's home from 5 minutes away. That's great. Good job. Dmitry Peskov, a Kremlin spokesman, told the daily press conference on Monday. They still do daily press conferences over there. We don't. According to the state news agency TASS, that a person identified in Russian media reports did work for the Russian government but was not a senior official and had been dismissed a few years ago. All these speculations in the the American media about who extracted whom, who was rescuing whom, and so on, this is, a genre of pulp fiction, he said. On whether Russia is now searching for this man, Peskov said, no, I can't confirm that because I don't know if he was an agent or not. I can only confirm to you that there was indeed such an employee in the administration and he was subsequently dismissed and then subsequently fell down off of his porch and was killed because his porch was only 2 feet, or only 6 inches off the ground. But I don't know. There was evidence that he fell out of a 17-story building and then was moved there by car, but, it's inconclusive. So, okay, I mean, it's out there. It's a weird story. Lots of people wandering around Twitter today saying, why is this coming out now? Why is this information being reported now? How come this is breaking now? And I guess that's, once we figure that out, everybody will be dead. But by the time we figure all this out, well, it could be really interesting. There's so much going on. Oh yes, right. To return to an earlier point, though, this is something I meant to bring up back when we were talking about Liberty University. I made mention of something yesterday in the part that I did read. Well, actually, I made mention of it first, and then it became something of a theme. The question of the value of a Liberty University degree. And I wondered whether some people might say, well, I certainly wouldn't choose Liberty University myself, perhaps, here among our audience. I'm sure that happens a lot. But why do you say, why do you diminish the value of the degree? I mean, isn't that sort of elitist? Yes, by the way, I would agree that it actually is somewhat elitist to do that. But, I also think there's good reason, not the least of which is the testimony or the discussion under the conditions of anonymity, of course, by some of the sources in the article, which we did read yesterday, saying, hey, I don't even consider us a school anymore. We're not educating. We're just a real estate hedge fund funded by tuition money that students think they're handing over. I mean, I imagine they're holding classes and everything, aren't they? But I mean, if you're not careful about keeping up the quality of your education because you really don't care, and you have a captive audience of people who believe in the Liberty University credo and mission, despite the fact that the president of the university lives a completely hypocritical life, well, evangelical Christians are probably used to that, for one thing. And for another, they think they're getting the imprimatur of Liberty University, a Christian institution. And, there have been places where I'm sure they have been proud to depart from educational scientific orthodoxy and say, we teach things differently. I don't know whether they, teach creationism there and say, look, this is what we're doing here, and you can be proud that you're anti-PC going out into the world with a science degree, or what purports to be a science degree that includes no science education. But a little bit more concrete example here I happened to see from someone on Twitter tweeting back and forth with the historian Kevin Cruz, who you're all aware of, is John Piankowski or Pijankowski. I don't know how he pronounces the J with a Y sound or not, but Pijanowski, Pianjowski. And John, in speaking with Kevin Cruz, says, I was once on a panel at a national conference, and the professor next to me, I guess John's a professor as well, was from Liberty. Let's just open up his thing. Yes, John is a Fulbright scholar and a professor of ethics and educational leadership, if you must know. Though he doesn't, in the bio, identify his institution, the institution to which he's attached, but that's all right. Anyway, he's on a panel at a national conference. The professor next to him was from Liberty. I told the audience, we keep our doctoral cohort at a max of 12, which of course suggests close supervision of their doctoral candidates. She, this other professor, then offered that they, at Liberty, had 1,000 doctoral students. I leaned into my mic. I'm going to do that now. Ready? Here I come. You can't hear that. Maybe you can hear the difference when you're really in close to the mic. I like that. I leaned into the mic and I said, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that number? Now, he goes on to say, to be clear, I am not talking about the entire university. I am talking about one degree program. I don't know which program it is. She was telling us that in this one degree program, Liberty University has 1,000 online doctoral students. Kevin Cruz asks, like many of you may just do the same. Wait, online doctoral students? Yes. Okay. Online doctoral programs, he says, John says, are increasingly popular in professional prep fields like education leadership. Programs like ours, students come to campus each semester and classes meet via video conference software, so we actually see and talk to each other. Some do none of that. For us, we see it as part of our land grant mission to reach out into rural spaces where doctoral ed and school leadership for working educators would not be possible otherwise. That's why our max is 12. For some others, it is a relatively high-margin cash generator. And other people chime in and say, yeah, it can be fairly well done under the right conditions, like small cohorts. We have the same issues with rurality, says this other contributor here, but no one can have a quality program with 1,000 grad students in one program. So I just bring that up by way of pointing out that there's serious and real reason to have questions about whether or not you can label Liberty University as a shady operation, which is, I think, what I did in passing. Nobody complained. I think everybody here probably agreed that they're a shady operation. But educationally, it's simply a good case to be made that they're underserving their tuition payers, but that it might, in many cases, it may be the entire purpose that the tuition payers have in mind. I simply want to be able to pay the fee and get the degree, and I don't really care that it's not quality education. I need the degree to advance in my field, and my employer values the Liberty University name. So that might just be enough. All right, what to pick for the next thing to move on to? The break is coming up, but I'm going to try this one out here. Since we've been talking so much about Russia and Russian trolling and what may or may not be true, here is a story in a source about which I know nothing. However, I did see. Did I keep the original tweet? I probably didn't, but I think that it might have been something that came to me through Melissa Ryan. But I'm not entirely positive, just retweeting this thing. But I don't know this publication, Meduza, Meduza, Meduza.io. But they offer this, a story entitled Troll Factories, So 2016. How the Moscow government diversified its online election interference strategies this summer. And I do know that Melissa's been working on that subject. And the fact that she found it interesting enough to pass on, or I think she did, leads me to think perhaps we ought to give a look to this story here. Shortly before Sunday's elections to the Moscow City Duma, did you know about this? A mass of Russian-language news sites and social media accounts began posting about what they called Lanovoy's visit. List. Why did I say visit? Because I'm stuck on the V in that name. Okay. Lanovoy's list. The outlets all claimed that Vasily Lanovoy, Lanovoy, a popular award-winning actor, had compiled a list of the candidates he believed should be elected to the City Duma in every precinct. The idea of such a list was not new. After opposition candidates were blocked en masse from running for the Moscow City Duma, liberal activists led by Alexei Navalny began promoting a Smart Vote campaign, which recommended candidates in Moscow precincts who were allowed to run, but who are not favored by the city's current regime. Lanovoy's list was clearly a pro-regime alternative to the Smart Vote strategy, but there was a catch. Vasily Lanovoy soon announced that he hadn't created the list at all. Meduza discovered that the websites and social media pages that had posted the fake list were all controlled by companies with close ties to Moscow City Hall. Our investigative division followed those ties into a rabbit hole of online state propaganda that makes troll factories look like old news. Let's read on. It all started with what seemed to be ordinary neighborhood groups on the Russian social media site, Vkontakte, Contacte. Okay, so Contacte makes some sense to us here as a cognate, right? They had innocent-sounding names like My Home Strogino. Okay, that sounds very innocent. And Vikino FM. I don't know how innocent they sound, but I guess to a Russian speaker they sound innocent. But a couple of days before the September 8th Moscow City Duma elections, dozens of the groups posted identical links to an article announcing that Lenovo's list for the Moscow City Duma elections had been released. The piece was published by the Moscow government-controlled outlet Argumenty I Fakti, and each neighborhood group that posted it highlighted the individual candidate Lenovo supposedly favored. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. You're on Roots Radio. Let's see. I scrolled down to see how long the story was, and now I am not entirely sure where we left off. But we had this piece published in the Moscow government-owned outlet Argumenty I Fakti, and each neighborhood group that posted this list highlighted the individual candidate that Lenovo, and I'm still not sure of the pronunciation here, supposedly favored for that group's precinct. The posts kept coming even after Lenovo made clear that the list wasn't his. Why would a troll stop, right? Continuing his trolling all by itself. A closer look reveals that the simultaneous posts should have been no surprise. All of the groups in question are used largely for posting content that stems directly from Moscow City Hall, from announcements about government-run events to links from government-owned news sites. Thanks to a 2017 investigation by Medusa's Ivan Golunov, or perhaps Ivan, he might prefer we say, Golunov, journalists already knew that these supposed neighborhood groups actually belong to a company called Teo Media. The service controls 400 local groups on VKontakte, Instagram, and Facebook, where it posts online content for pay. The company's contracts are formulated through another firm, Sosedi Media, or Neighbors Media. A company called Sosedi had previously been shown to run pro-government campaigns in the very same local VKontakte groups. From Sosedi on upward, the ownership of these groups moves along a chain of firms that leads squarely to state-owned institutions. Moscow's Department of City Property and Moscow State University's National Research Institute for Social Systems. In between its middleman is a middleman, Moscow Information Technologies, or MIT. Look out for that. That has held responsibility for much of the city's expanded propaganda campaign this summer. All right, we'll see whether they use this other abbreviation later. Remember, the Moscow State University's National Research Institute for Social Systems is apparently referred to by NIISS here. But then there's MIT, the Moscow Information Technologies. Companies like MIT receive large contracts and subsidies from Moscow government agencies to provide informational and analytical support in the development and implementation of citywide projects and programs. Often, Medusa found, they compete against each other in pseudo-competitive contract auctions. For example, MIT, whose daughter company owns 99% of Sosedi, recently beat out Krasnye Palati, just taking a wild stab in the dark here, which owns 1% of Sosedi. So how do you like that? MIT, whose daughter company owns 99% of Sosedi, recently beat out this other company, which owns 1% of Society, for a 39 million ruble contract. It's about just under $600,000 here. Subsidies from Moscow City Hall's Department of Media and Advertising have proven to be even more lucrative for this chain of companies, which have received hundreds of millions of rubles for the production and distribution of informational and analytical products. The leaders of the companies involved in this scheme did not respond to Meduza's requests for comment. When we messaged one of the neighborhood groups that posted about Lenovo's list, its administrator said the group was not owned by Society. However, when we asked about the relationship between Society Media, which sells advertisements in the group, and Society itself, our correspondent was blocked by all of Society Media's groups simultaneously. All right. Now, Moscow's local propaganda ecosystem is examined. Society and the groups associated with it may have brought Lenovo's list into view on social media, but they don't control the state-owned news outlets that first wrote about it. Those websites and online newspapers form yet another government-controlled infrastructure base. Moscow has 142 neighborhoods in 12 districts, and each of those official divisions has a news site. Together, those websites make up a single information ecosystem that operates under Moscow City Hall's control, but Russia's Media Regulation and Censorship Agency issues separate licenses to each one. This, in turn, means that news aggregators like Yandex News interpret the websites as separate news sources. That's a circumstance Moscow's government often uses to its advantage, diluting negative coverage by flooding the web with positive stories. For example, while thousands of protesters marched through central Moscow on March 26, 2017, the top news item on Yandex News was about a spring festival that all of the city's official news sites had covered simultaneously. Multiple private contractors receive significant portions of their income from producing those official local outlets. The largest among them, IMA Consulting, often competes, and that in scare quotes, against its own subordinate entities for contracts much like the media service MIT. It's not the only connection between the two companies. In practice, the editors and journalists who work for IMA Consulting simply fill out templates with language sent to them through MIT that comes directly from City Hall curators. Okay. Well, as I scroll down, this is actually fairly dense material, but I guess what I'm going to do with this before we spend the rest of the show trying to wade through it is we'll take from it the lesson that Russian trolling is evolving, which we should have guessed if we didn't actually know already, but that in all likelihood, the techniques that they use for controlling their domestic populace will shortly be appearing here, adapted to try and drive the votes of our domestic population in the 2020 election. And although I would like to get a handle on exactly what it is that they're doing so that we can spot it when it happens here, I'm not certain that this piece is making it entirely clear. It might require some study offline, and we'll get back to you and see whether anybody else can pick this up and translate it more readily into information understood by lay people here. So, okay, we'll just take it as a red flag to watch out for advanced trolling techniques that go beyond that which we, I think by now, pretty well understand what happened in, or the techniques that were used in 2016. I don't really right off the bat see the difference between what happened last time and putting up fake lists and pretending that favored candidates from the trolls had been endorsed by famous people who really didn't endorse them. That seems like garden variety trolling to me. But perhaps we can have somebody else differentiate this in the days to come. Okay. What we'll leave for tomorrow and tomorrow's discussion, any more attempts to try and unravel what's happening in the UK, except to say that there was some dramatic footage from the House of Commons circulating today, which I guess is out of the ordinary for what you'd see there, but didn't appear to clarify in any way what's going on exactly. I guess the Parliament has now entered into its prorogation period, though, and I'm sure Greg will want to talk about this tomorrow. We'll see whether we have the time to do it. And apparently, this involves some pomp and circumstance, some protocol involving not only the Speaker of the House of Commons, but another official known, I guess, in shorthand as Black Rod. And I guess, does this discuss who it is? I have the footage here, and I can't really... Playing it doesn't actually help anything, but I guess she's I don't know if I put this article aside or not because it was so difficult to unravel in the morning. But apparently, and this will break Greg up, I'm sure, that in the end, it looks like the much beloved, let's say, Speaker of the House of Commons will be resigning from his job. And this just after Greg became such a big fan of John Bercow. This is the Hills version, aggregation version of this, I guess. UK House of Commons Speaker announces surprise resignation. The Speaker of the British House of Commons announces resignation Monday, just hours ahead of a vote where Prime Minister Boris Johnson's call for an early election is likely to be defeated. And I believe it was. And I believe now he's set the record for the most number of initial votes in a row that a new prime minister has lost. I believe he's up to 5 in a row. That's now an all-time record for the first 5 votes for a prime minister to lose. I did see one wag, let's say, on Twitter observing that he breaks the previous record of 4 in a row held by Boris Johnson. So he's smashing all of the records here. John Bercow, though, opened Monday's session by saying he would step down on October 31st if the push for an early election fails. Remember, he does originally come from the Conservative Party here. Johnson has promised the United Kingdom will exit from the European Union by that date. That's the October 31st thing. Halloween, everyone. We degrade Parliament at our peril, Bercow told lawmakers, tearing up. Throughout my time as Speaker, I have sought to increase the relative authority of the legislature, for which I will make absolutely no apology to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Bercow was given a standing ovation by almost the entirety of Parliament after his announcement. The resignation comes after a tumultuous week in British politics. Johnson lost his Conservative Party majority in Parliament and failed in an attempt to ram through a no-deal Brexit. Bercow has been an advocate for allowing Parliament to serve as a check on the Prime Minister's power, a position that was crucial last week when the House of Commons passed a law allowing it to block Johnson's attempts to take Britain out of the EU without a deal. So part of the dramatic scene yesterday as Black Rod, who, as I understand it, is dispatched, I think, from the House of Lords, or by the House of Lords, rather. I got to check this out. To, I guess the Black Rod official here summons the Speaker of Commons at the direction of Lords, I suppose, and I don't know whether they cross over and go over to the other chamber or not. And it sounded like, and I mean, I have no understanding of this, but this sounds like how it might happen. It might be that the House of Lords informs Commons that it has been prorogued in this way, and this is just the formal ceremony by which this is accomplished. And I guess the speaker here, Bercow, made a short speech before saying, well, the law is the law, tradition is tradition. I will submit to this. I'm not going to refuse to go over there and refuse somehow to be prorogued and try and keep Parliament open. But I will say, he's used the time, I will say that I believe that this is an unusual and abnormal proroguing of Parliament. This is not the way it's supposed to be, and this is being done by executive fiat, and I'm a pro-legislature guy, and I oppose this, but I've been summoned, and that's the way it works, and I'm going to submit to that. So doing the Al Gore routine there in presiding over his own disempowerment, but he's going to retire as well. Who would want to stick around after a moment like that? Okay, we will continue on then, try and figure out what's going on there, but speak a little bit about that. And I guess also just to set the table anyway for tomorrow, we should point out that there's some activity in the Judiciary Committee about which I don't know how excited we should be, but they are preparing, Jerry Nadler is preparing a resolution that purports, and we purport, everybody gets the purported treatment here, to be, well, as NBC News puts it, outlining an impeachment probe. Of course, it's been Nadler's position for a couple of weeks now. We didn't hear very much about it because they went on their recess, which, really, quite honestly, was probably ill-advised. But we haven't heard much about it since he said, oh no, for all intents and purposes, this should be considered an impeachment probe. So I guess this is what he's been working on during the weeks intervening. NBC News offers us the opportunity to read the full text of the House Judiciary Resolution outlining the impeachment probe, and tells us Nadler declared last month that his panel was proceeding with an impeachment investigation of Trump despite there being no vote to do so. So, what's happening here? One of the things that's happening is it's really up to, I think, the prerogative of the chair to say what the panel is doing. There isn't any mechanism by which anyone else can deny or force the chairman to deny that he's doing what he says he's doing. And there's no procedure of which I'm aware that is required before a chairperson is validly able to say, hey, what I'm involved in here is an impeachment investigation. I mean, it's just not a formal thing. You're either impeached or you're not, but are you investigating an impeachment? I say I am, and I'm the chairman of the committee. Well, then you are. There's really not much room for interpretation. Anyway, NBC News, they say, has obtained a 5-page resolution in which the House Judiciary Committee has laid out the parameters of what the panel is calling its ongoing impeachment investigation of Donald Trump. The committee could vote on the resolution as early as Wednesday, that'd be tomorrow, and you can read the full text here, and I've got it. Now, what's this link to? The House Judiciary has laid out the parameters. Let's see. The narrative version of this thing, reported by Alex Moe and Alan Smith, goes like this. The House Judiciary Committee laid out specific committee procedures governing hearings moving forward as part of what it's calling an ongoing impeachment investigation of President Donald Trump, setting the stage for a vote to define that probe, which could come this week. The release of the resolution comes after the committee's chairman, Jerry Nadler of New York, declared last month that his panel was proceeding with an impeachment investigation, despite there being no vote to do so. The vote expected Thursday and confirmed by NBC News, to NBC News by a source familiar with the committee's plan. So they say Thursday, the other one says Wednesday. Will include language that is expected to follow the procedures of the Judiciary Committee used in the 1974 impeachment proceedings against Richard Nixon. The resolution, should it pass, would make the following 4 changes to the committee rules governing hearings. Bullet points here. One saying, It would allow the chairman to designate full committee or subcommittee hearings as part of the impeachment probe. It would allow staff to question witnesses for an additional hour, equally divided between the majority and minority. It would allow for secret grand jury materials to be reviewed in closed executive session. That's our the stuff we've been talking about all along. Every time it comes out, which rule are we talking about? Was it, I can't remember now. Part of me wants to say 5 and part of me wants to say 6, right? Let's see. Grand jury, it was 6, right? 6E, that's it. Okay, so off the bat, or right off the top of my head, I confused myself as to which one it was. But it would allow for all of that 6E material to be reviewed in closed executive session. Remember all the time we spent saying that moving ahead with a formal impeachment inquiry would leave judges with very little doubt as to whether or not Congress was entitled to that 6E information that had been redacted from the Mueller report and might exist elsewhere. Well, here's their move to get it. And lastly, it would allow for the president's counsel to respond to information and testimony presented in committee in writing and give the chairman authority to invite the president's counsel to review and respond in writing to executive session materials. I guess the one that people are highlighting here is the idea of allowing staff to question witnesses. And that's the big parallel, I guess, that people who remember the 1974 impeachment proceedings bring first to mind. And it's a partial departure from the relatively ineffective 5 minutes for every member alternating between the parties mode of questioning, and might allow for some deeper dives and drilling down into information by people with a more prosecutorial bent. Anyway, these procedures are expected to follow the Judiciary Committee procedures from 1974. President Trump went to great lengths to obstruct special counsel Mueller's investigation, including the president's attempts to remove the special counsel and encourage witnesses to lie and to destroy or conceal evidence, Nadler said in a statement accompanying the release. Anyone else who did this would face federal criminal prosecution. No one is above the law, Nadler added. The unprecedented corruption, cover-up, and crimes by the president are under investigation by the committee as we determine whether to recommend articles of impeachment or other Article I remedies. The adoption of those additional procedures is the next step in that process and will help ensure our impeachment hearings are informative to Congress and the public while providing the president with the ability to respond to evidence presented against him. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham said the resolution was the latest gambit in a wider effort to hamstring the president, yada, yada. Should we even bother with her statement? I don't think so. Quite honestly, it's not even a matter of fairness. It's just dumb statement. The decision to draft a resolution laying out the boundaries of the investigation was first reported by Politico last week and later confirmed by NBC News. A vote on the resolution would be the first formal vote as a part of the Judiciary Committee's impeachment investigation. Democratic committee aides elaborated on the resolution on Monday, calling it the next step in the probe, with one saying it represents a significant step forward. Maybe. This committee is absolutely in an impeachment investigation, one aide said, adding that the panel is going full steam ahead. Democratic leadership, one aide criticized the release of the resolution, telling NBC News constituents will falsely assume this means the House is impeaching Trump. It's going to be a media circus, and you'll have all these confused constituents who think the impeachment is happening, but the emperor has no clothes. Which emperor are we talking about here? Are you talking about, are you using that for Nadler? The Democratic leadership aide said of the resolution, adding sarcastically, let's set the table in case we have dinner, but we haven't started making the food. So I don't know whether that's a person who is anti-impeachment or just someone who is pro-impeachment but skeptical that this actually does anything. That's a good question. The release comes just as members return from a 6-week recess. During that time, the committee has expanded their probe to include potential violations of the Constitution's Emoluments Clause, that would be wise, and hush payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to 2 women who they said had had affairs with Trump. Relationships he has denied. You know who they're talking about, Karen McDougal, Stormy Daniels. So, yeah. it's a big step forward. Is it a wise use of our time to read the resolution? Not today, I don't think. We'll discuss it in more general terms, I'm sure, tomorrow if we can get Joan on the program. And maybe as we move forward, we would take a look at the resolution. It's a good resource to have on hand if things get weird, just to see what they're authorizing for themselves and where Trump's counsel might object to proceedings based on anything that they fail to address in the resolution. But, good luck to them. I hope they've written a solid resolution here. Whatever. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. We're going to have to wait and see how the Trump administration responds to this stuff and whether or not they've got the gumption on the congressional side to enforce their subpoenas or use their remedies that they've gotten, whether this is the leadership coming around to being dragged into impeachment, if advocates could build the momentum, or whether this is a palliative. I don't know. All right. Let's see. I guess just while we close things out here today, I think I'm going to have to spend some time organizing. I have so many links in Pocket. I think I might have to put them into folders so that we can choose themes for the day and do things that way. All right. The Hill, I see now tweeting around a story that says, importantly in the headline, Trump had deal with airport to send air crews to his Scotland resort, according to a report. And that important not because we didn't know it, but because it comes after Trump spent time yesterday denying that there was any relationship at all, even though he had already tweeted out and bragged on that relationship and his intention to make the airport really successful many years ago. So I don't know. We'll look into that one and just briefly read it as we exit from the show today. The Trump Organization and President Trump himself have been directly involved in developing a partnership between his Turnberry Golf Resort in Scotland and Glasgow Prestwick Airport since 2014, according to the New York Times, and of course, according to Trump himself. He has said as much. We read those tweets. We prepared you well. The partnership, which began a year before Trump's presidential campaign kicked off, worked to add Trump Turnberry to a list of hotels used by the airport's air crew, despite the fact that it is significantly further away from the airport than other hotels used in a similar manner and has higher advertised prices, according to the Times. Executives with the organization met with airport officials for talks on how to drive more referrals, according to the Times, citing documents obtained through the Scottish Freedom of Information law. The Pentagon and the airport both confirmed to the Times that the airport has a separate arrangement with the U.S. Air Force to refuel American planes and arrange hotel accommodations. We provide a full handling service for customers and routinely arrange overnight accommodation for visiting air crew when requested, the Prestwick Airport said in a statement on Monday. And here we're talking about if you take a flight into Prestwick, commercial, private, Air Force, what have you, and you need to have your air crew stay overnight, as flight attendants often do and pilots always do when they're flying all over the place. There's deals set up. You have hundreds of personnel flying in and out of airports all over the world. You have deals set up for special rates or reserving rooms at various hotels, and now the Trump Turnberry Resort wanted in on that. The report comes amid controversy over U.S. military personnel staying at the resort while traveling through the airport in March, and of course I think probably an ongoing thing long beyond that. Trump has repeatedly denied involvement in the move, tweeting on Monday, "I know nothing about an Air Force plane landing at an airport which I do not own and have nothing to do with, near Turnberry Air Resort, which I do own, in Scotland, and filling up with fuel with the crew staying overnight at Turnberry." Parenthetically, he says, "They have good taste." I guess all he has to say about it. Well, it's just not true. And It contradicts his own tweets from 2014. The New York Times has gathered the information on it. I guess it's all just sitting out there, so why not add that to your resolution over on the Judiciary Committee? I imagine that falls under emoluments. But by the way, I will say it does bear some examining what the members of the House and some members, I guess, of the committee have to say about what they view as their charge under this thing. They're still making the Mueller report the central basis of all of this. And really, honestly, the most impeachable stuff is actually well outside of what was examined by Mueller. So I'm glad they're broadening things. I'm glad emoluments make it in there. That seems to me the most impeachable stuff they have going. All right, time now to hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam, who has all the stories that we missed today, including as he starts off in his program with, actually, I'm sorry, that was his note to me, but Wilbur Ross apparently revealed as the source at the Commerce Department of the NOAA memo.
From DailyKos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, he's on the same track with the impeachment inquiry, and so more about that coming up next. But also on the program, 90% of Florida school districts rejected the Republican legislature's plan to arm teachers. That's an important development in what's going on down there and around the country. Plus more, all next.